This is not the meeting we thought we'd have or that we wanted to have a week after the elections. We'll leave it there. We've all been I'm asking everybody for their emotions on what they've been through, what they're going through. Anybody else eating their emotions? It's been a tough week for that. Other people I've talked to are drinking their emotions. Tough week for that. But what we thought we'd do is just give you, the represent view on where we think we are right now, what happened in Pennsylvania, and then talk about where we think we're going in the future. So take next slide, please, Tiffany. As I said, it's not the election we expected when we were feeling optimistic or hoped for. The federal government clearly is going to have Republican MAGA control, and the priorities for the new administration are pretty darn awful. Tulsi Gabbard, head of national intelligence, she's been known to share national intelligence with Russia and with Syria in the past. So be interesting. But all of these things are things that are against my values and our values as a PAC. Many of them are, the federal issues such as immigration and deportation are more federal issues, but what happens within Pennsylvania, we're just going to have to think about. Some states are already talking about it. Gavin Newsom, I think, is leading the charge, but Gretchen Whitmer's doing it. They're doing it in Wisconsin. They're already talking about, revving up their AGs in order to start. What are the plans they think they're going to get hit with by the federal government, and what can they go against? For example, Trump has already said that one of the things he wants to have in an edict is that if you have a concealed carry permit for a gun, let's say in Alabama, then that's going to be good nationwide. And so he's going to say that too bad, California, you don't have concealed carry permits, but as long as something is valid in another state, it's valid in yours. So much for the discussion of states' rights. I told myself not to be sarcastic on this call, and there I go. So I know that these are the kind of issues that a number of states are going to be talking about suing the federal government, and they're getting ready for that. Next slide, please. There were some bright spots for Democrats, and I don't want people to think, first of all, the polls were not wrong. It was all within margin of error for all of these states, and the polls were about right. And it wasn't a case that all women lost. There's a tendency to say, oh, this was misogynistic America. Senate Democratic women who won re-election, Tammy Baldwin, Jackie Rosen, and Amy Klobuchar all won re-election. New Democratic women, like Alyssa Slotkin, who won in Michigan, despite the fact that Trump won Michigan. And also 2 Black women, the first time we'll ever have 2 Black women in the United States Senate at the same time, both from our general region. Ruben Gallego beat Carrie Lake in Arizona, despite the fact that Trump won Arizona. There's going to be a new Democratic governor in North Carolina, and they had down ballot flips. And so it had been the case in North Carolina that there was a veto-proof majority in at least one of the chambers, and there were enough flips to D in their state legislature to get rid of the veto-proof majority. That was good news, and they did something right. The Wisconsin legislature, because they had gone through redistricting, and their effect of their work throughout the state in their coordinated campaign, although Kamala Harris lost, the Wisconsin legislature is more blue than it had been. And so, yes, Paige, yeah, you say you didn't know about these. These are important things for us to know for 2 reasons. One is I'm looking for something to feel good about, but the other is what can we learn in Pennsylvania? What can we learn that other states did better than we did? And I think it's pretty important that we and that other people in Pennsylvania look to see what we can learn from others. By the way, the head of the Democratic Party in North Carolina that did so well, I think she's 28 years old, a woman. And this is what she did in North Carolina. It's pretty cool. Next slide, please. Pennsylvania elections, our basic overview here. they're still counting votes, and as of last night, there's a recount going on that'll take about a week. Last I heard, Casey was behind by 30,000 votes. There's still about 100,000 votes that are provisional or overseas ballots. My daughter and her husband are two of those, so I hope they've counted theirs by now. But we'll see what happens. It's expected to take another week to if there's 100,000 and not all of them are going to be good, many of them get thrown out, but we'll see what happens with the Casey McCormick race. The U.S. House, Pennsylvania is now going to be represented by 7 Democrats and 10 Republicans. We're down from 9 and 8 with the 2 losses in Northeast Pennsylvania. Here's some really icky ones. The Pennsylvania row offices flipped to R. Remember earlier I mentioned that California and Wisconsin and other states are looking to rev up their attorneys general to start fighting some of the laws or some of the edicts that are going to come out from the federal government that challenge states' rights. It's not going to happen in Pennsylvania because our attorney general is now a Republican, or will be a Republican. So it's going to be hard to fight those. And Pennsylvania goes up as one of these states that is, it's hard to say we're purple with the results of the race, including the row offices, Attorney General, Auditor General, and Treasurer. The PA Senate is going to stay 22 and 28. Jimmy Dillon lost in Philadelphia. We lost a Senate seat in the city of Philadelphia. But the good news is Patty Kim, who we've been supported for years, is coming back as a Pennsylvania senator. And so that was a flip. So we end up 22 and 28 once again. And the PA House, with lots of changes, ends up being 102 to 101. So although we had hoped that Speaker McClinton and the Democrats would have enough wiggle room to get other things done, they at least maintain the majority. Thank you, Jamie, for the comment that as of today, Casey's deficit's down to 27,000 votes. So we'll see what happens. Next slide, please. And our numbers this cycle, I think this is my last one, Meg. This is what represented. We invested $740,000 in 60 women across the Commonwealth. We had 1,477 donors. Thank you so much. That's a lot of people from all over this country. We held, this cycle, we held 27 of these breakfast briefings and 16 in-person events, and we're very proud of our influence. We didn't flip seats we wanted, but we made ourselves known. In a number of seats where we worked, the Republican had its first challenger in many years. I think we have somebody here from Kate Lennon's office who just would like to say something, because that's a great example of one where we forced the incumbent to talk. So do you want to say something?
Yes, Christine, thank you. I'm Michelle Slinger. I'm a Democratic committee woman in Beaver County, and I worked on Kate Lennon's campaign. She is unfortunately unable to attend this morning, but I just wanted to share a few words as we wrap up her campaign. We're having a get-together for our team next week, and just to wrap up with Represent PA, Kate says, "My apologies for missing this session. Let me begin by thanking Represent PA for support. You gave our campaign a financial boost when we really needed it. Obviously, the outcome was not what we wanted or what anyone wanted on November 5th, but we need to keep up the fight. Here in Western PA, we are not giving up. There are still so many like-minded people. We will still vote. We are still going to run for office, and we are still boots on the ground for state and national candidates. Please keep up the good deeds, and Represent PA will always have my support as an organization as well. We need to stay strong and move forward. Fondly, Kate Lennon." Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And that was so nice of Kate to send us a message. But I I talked to, we sent messages to all of our candidates, and I talked to many of them personally. And that's the kind of message I received from people, is that they're happy with the campaigns, but they felt that the winds were against them. Many people are talking about that they're going to run again, either in 2 years for state house or in 4 years. Caitlin, and I'm talking to you. You can pass that on to Michelle. If the current senator who just got reelected decides to retire at some point, Kate will be back in that race. In the meantime, she's going to be very noisy. And that's what we expect from the women we've supported. So we've asked them to stay in touch with us. And it just makes me proud to know that, they appreciate it. Next slide, please. Is this one yours, Meg, or mine?
No, it is. It's mine.
Okay. This
Thanks.
is Meg Pritchard, our political director.
Thanks. Actually, Tiffany, would you mind going back to the last slide for just 1 second? I did want to take another second to look at that top line there, that we invested $740,000 in 60 women across the Commonwealth, because I think that that's kind of I think that's both a breathtaking number for us and for the women that we supported. And I think it says a lot about the work that we've been doing. And I wanted to just do 2 seconds of breakdown on that so people understood the context as we moved forward, and also put in a plug for our endorsement committee, because we didn't do this alone. We did this with the help of an endorsement committee. And that endorsement committee is made up of some of our 1,400 odd donors who supported us at $1,200 a year or more, or a cycle or more. And for that, we welcome them into sort of the inner circle of making decisions. And without their help and support, we would not have been able to allocate this money, or we would have allocated it in a way that perhaps might have been a little different. So those folks that were part of our endorsement committee were really critical in helping us sift through the information, make our choices. Our meetings are always spirited. And we would love to have anybody join us. Any of our supporters or our donors join us once they've made a donation at that level. It's really, well, I consider it a fun time. And I did also want to drill down a tiny bit into that number, just so people had some context for, well, Diana's telling me $12,000 per candidate is good. No, I'm sorry. I think, unless I'm missing something, that's a little bit of a misunderstanding. Maybe I spoke too fast. The donors in the endorsement committee invest at the level of $1,200 into our PAC, but the amount of money that we give our candidates ranged from $1,000 in some places to, oh, Chris, do you remember what?
$105,000.
Thank you. 105. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Helen, for putting that in the chat. Yes. So the donor level is $1,200 per year, but we gave far more. Well, I mean, Diane, I don't disagree with you. Help us raise more money and we'll give some more money out. $740,000 over 60 races. I can tell you that we did that in rounds. So we had an incumbent protection round, which will be, context for our next slide. Pre-primary round to support those women who had primaries. 2 rounds of general election funding, one in July and one in September. And then a final small round in October to hopefully get some people over the finish line. And we did. Tiffany, if you wouldn't mind, the next slide would be great. Thanks. So as I mentioned, incumbent protection is something we do usually at the front of the cycle. So at the beginning, at the end of the year in December, and then for those incumbents who didn't get us in our incumbent protection round at the beginning pre-primary, all of our endorsed incumbent women, which is 33 current sitting women in our state assembly, won re-election. 20 of those women had challengers, some of those from their own party in a primary, others in opposition, Republicans. All 33 will be returning to Harrisburg, and we couldn't be more excited to see them take their seats again and continue the fantastic work that they have been doing. And Chris mentioned that she didn't feel like, that we were sort of grasping for some things to feel good about. I think the two new women in the House, Nikki Rivera in Lancaster and Jacqueline Rusnock in Berks, are reasons to celebrate. We did lose 2 women, but for good reason, and they were replaced with men. Okay, but they were replaced with Democratic men, we lost them for good reason. Rep Bullock is going on to something in the nonprofit sector, and Patty Kim has moved on to the Senate. She's our one new woman in the Senate in the 15 in Dauphin County. So the House caucus remains 36 out of 102, or 35%. And Chris can tell you that when she first started this work, which was before I started this work, that was not even close to the number of women we had in the House. Chris, do you remember what?
It's on the next slide.
It's on the next slide. Okay, I'll get to that then. And the Senate caucus is now 9 out of 22, so more than a third, 40%. Thank you, Peggy, for the name of where Rep Bullock was going. It is Project Home. Thank you. Tiffany, next slide, please. So as Chris mentioned, the balance of power in both chambers stays the same, which presents, as we've talked about in other breakfast briefings, some particular challenges for our women candidates, for our Democratic members of the state assembly. So 28 Republicans, 9 of them women. So it's not that women can't win, obviously. But the impact of that, of course, is that as the Republicans continue to hold control of that chamber, the Republican chairs are in control of what gets talked about, what gets voted out of committee, and what gets decided, what gets passed. And as we saw last session, our Democratic, their Democratic colleagues in the House approved or helped approve more than 400 bills. Most of those bills in line with the progressive issues and values that we espouse, and they were not acted on in the Senate. So we can expect continued stalemate, a continued stalemate from the folks in the Senate. We do have 22 Democrats, 8 of them women, so more than a third of that caucus. So again, proof that women can win, which is our mission. Actually, so post-election, we did get one gain, net 8, 9. So we did get one gain. That was Patty Kim. There's the statistic for the Senate. Yeah, 14%. So that was before my time, but when Chris first started represent. And so I think that number, again, from 14, almost 15% to 40% or close to it, again, establishes that women can win. Tiffany, the next slide, please. Thank you. So again, the balance of power in terms of Democrats and Republicans stays the same in the House, a very slim 1-seat majority, which means that as things inevitably do as over the course of the next session, somebody may leave, somebody may retire, somebody may leave in disgrace. We've had a couple of those, not our candidates, but others. We will again be facing special elections where the balance of the House will be teetering. Post-election, we did, as I said, lose 2 women, but for very good reason. No, I'm sorry. The Republicans lost 2 women overall. We lost 2 women, but then gained 2 women. So we remain on par at a little over a third of the House for the Democrats. And here's our statistic from when Chris first started Represent: 16 women out of 92 seats. So just shy of 18% of the caucus. Tiffany, the next one, please. So as I said, the Pennsylvania House Democrats will continue to have that difficult 1-seat majority. We will inevitably face those special elections. We will inevitably have hopefully places where we will have women candidates where we can help those women in those special elections. Another ray of sunshine, so to speak, in this otherwise grim election is that Joanna McClinton remains our speaker. And we have supported Joanna from, Chris, when was the first time we supported?
2015. In 2015, she ran in a primary against 3 men, and we supported her then. And she knows it.
Yep. She is one of our biggest supporters. And we in turn we support her and love the fact that we had a role in putting her into the speakership. As we love the fact that we had a role in putting all of our soon-to-be legislators into their seats. Again, we face gridlock in the state assembly. It is good that we have a Democratic governor, but our Democratic governor can't sign anything into law without bills that have passed both the House and the Senate. So I think we anticipate that this is going to be another tough year for our endorsed legislators. It is remarkable, Betsy, that we managed to hold the House, given the trends up and down the ballot. I think it says something about the fact that people went to the polls with lots of different perspectives on national versus local or regional races. I think we had hoped that there would be, call them tailwinds up and down the ballot, but I'm not sure that happened. And I think one of the reasons we can attribute that to the fact that people can no longer do straight ticket voting. That was removed by our Republican counterparts last cycle, the cycle before, Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right.
When we got mail-in ballots in the 2020 election.
Yes. I'm seeing thank you, Helen. I'm seeing in the chat that there are some folks talking about numbers for white women and white men.
Yeah, we haven't dug into all those numbers for Pennsylvania yet. There's a lot of stuff out there. We'll have to dig into that to understand our numbers better.
Yeah, I think that there's more nuance there than we know. And I think, Chris, do we want to? Yeah.
Should we move on? Thank you.
Yes.
Before we completely move on, I noticed that we have State Rep Lisa Borowski on the call, and we also have one of our past candidates, Elizabeth Morrow, who was one of our candidates this time. So, Lisa, how are you feeling about the legislature you're going back to? Would you like to say a word?
Well, good morning, everybody. I got on for you to have you guys make me feel better about everything. So I want to thank you.
We will in a minute, Lisa, but we did help to elect you last time. And one of the points I'm going to make while I'm looking at you right now is that everybody on this call has to remember 2016 was a terrible year for us in state elections. It was. 2018 was a golden year for picking up seats, particularly picking up seats for women in our state legislature. 2020 was another terrible year, but for us in the state house, even though Biden won. And 2022 was a lovely year. We even got people like Lisa Borowski into the state legislature. Lisa's from Radnor in Southeast Pennsylvania. So So Lisa, we're feeling like we're going to start talking in a minute about 2026 being like 2022, and you're going to help us lead that effort.
Yeah, certainly, I jumped on because the work you guys do is amazing. I wouldn't be here without Represent. I know many of you talk about the women in the House. All of us know that we owe our elections to the support of Represent. So, yeah, we are already talking about 2026. I think there's going to be opportunities. My hope is we had so many fantastic women running this time that I had the opportunity to get to know and support as well. So I'm hoping they will all come back, because I think things are going to be. I think the wind is going to change. I think the wind is going to be at our back, and we are going to be able to flip some of those seats. I mean, we're thrilled to have been able to hold the 102. We had our leadership elections. We're thrilled to have, our speaker-elect, Joanna McClinton. Matt Bradford is our leader. We had one slight change. We have a new caucus chair, who's Rob Matzey. So I saw somebody's on from Beaver County. I know you know Rob Matzey really well. So we're really excited to have Rob as part of our leadership team. We still have our powerhouse Southeastern, Leanne Kruger, certainly Joanna, and Tina Davis, who make up our leadership team as well. So, we are really excited about that. We are thrilled to be back at 102. We do know it's going to be a challenge. The Senate is always a challenge. But, we have our priorities. We know what we want to do, and we know what work we want to get done, so that we have a really good story to tell, I think, in 2026 about what we are doing as a state legislator to help and support the residents of our Commonwealth.
Thank you, Lisa. By the way, as you were having your leadership elections, it would have been nice to see another woman join the leadership team. I'm just saying, but we may need to get up over 40% in order to have enough. I'm just saying. Elizabeth Morrow, you are one of our wonderful candidates this time. Am I putting you on the spot too much to ask you to say a word? Even though I know you probably are very good at this.
Well, I want to just say thank you to everybody who supported my campaign. We raised almost, with support, we were right under $2 million. And then we knocked on, just my campaign knocked on 52,000 doors. So we did a massive ground effort. All of us are heartbroken, because it felt like everything was going right until Tuesday night. And what I think in my analysis is that we don't own the airwaves, and maybe we're running a race that is an older style in a more technological world. And if there is a way for us we're never going to be able to have the strength of somebody like Elon Musk, who has lots of attention, but maybe if we have hundreds of thousands of people out talking and doing something on TikTok or whatever, we can get the message out. We just need to rethink how we campaign. I met with my campaign staff last week, and we just thought about, first of all, we wanted to thank everybody who supported our campaign. So we are doing an event in my barn tomorrow night from 4 to 8 p.m. If anybody wants to come, just let me know. But also Jason and I were talking yesterday, how do we, because I'm a business owner, and one of the hardest things about business is getting people up to speed and making sure you've got a really strong staff. I hate the thought of losing the people that I have, because we really do have a strong campaign and a strong ground game. How do we keep those people engaged in something until we need to announce? And everyone wants me to announce like within a year. And it's like, what can we be doing in that year to build traction in the community? The other thing that I personally think is that the messaging that we went on was heavy into abortion, and maybe we needed to be stronger on the economy. I'm a small business owner, and I kept thinking it's like that James Carville statement, it's the economy, stupid. I feel like maybe we lost some voters because of that. But the other thing is literally I went to the precincts during election day. It was almost like robotic. People came in and they like didn't acknowledge you, didn't say hello. They knew what they were doing. And individuals on the ground say some of these voters they've never seen before, even though they've worked the precincts so many times. So somehow Republicans did a better job of turnout, and we just need to figure out what that is.
And I think that there's going to be a need to bring forth a lot of those thoughts. And Lisa, I'm sure, is taking notes. And I've already had conversations with Leanne Kruger and with Tina Davis. And we'd like to, help bring things forward. One of the things in the chat, and I was going to mention it later in the presentation, is, and Lisa Borowski mentioned it, let's have a Women's Day in Harrisburg. We've talked about having a Represent Day so that any of our supporters who want to come will have an event and we'll talk about these kinds of things. One of the people who was not successful this time, I talked to her the other day. She says her goal for the next few years before the next election, which she's going to run in again, is to go to every city council meeting, everything, and make herself known, because she also went heavy on abortion and not as heavy on the economics. And I think that part of the strategy should be just start listening to Fox News and go up with our arguments against it earlier. So, but thank you. I think one other candidate is on, Robin Skibber, I think I saw on. Did I get that right?
Hi, yes.
Robin from Pike County. How was it in Pike County?
I was just putting in the chat to Elizabeth. I felt very much the same. We had so much support in Pike County because we're obviously next to New Jersey, to give you a geographic lesson, New Jersey and New York. And because of the ballot, we had people taking buses here, knocking on doors. We had so many people canvassing and phone banking. It was abysmal on election day. And I felt like when I went, we tried to get to many of the polling places, and Pike and Wayne County is the district, and it's 3-1 Republican. So it was not going to be an easy lift, but I felt like I didn't know anybody at the polling places. It was just so strange to usually, I've lived here my whole life, but I felt the same thing. They were just came out of the basements to vote. And I hate to say that, but I'm still having some of that grief, I guess. But yeah. I can't thank you guys enough. And this is helping me. I'm taking notes and looking at this stuff. And I do think Joanna McClinton is a rock star. So I think this is encouraging.
Well, I'm hoping one of the things that the caucuses, both the Senate and the House caucus, will do is bring in all the candidates to talk about and get your lessons learned. And then also, as I've said several times, why were things different in Wisconsin, and why were things different in North Carolina? I've already heard Joanna talk about the fact that we need to make these races more local. And we need to and so that's both the goal for, the elections in 2 years and in 4 years, but that's also tells you what we need to be doing on the ground all the time.
Well, Chris, one of the reasons why I'm delighted to see Robin here, Robin, I think, I have a house up in Wayne County as well as a house here in Montgomery County, and Robin caught my attention because I think the Wayne County Dems brought her to my attention before she ever applied to us. But it's an example of one of the things that we support, which is building the democratic infrastructure for women in districts like this, helping that democratic infrastructure get built by supporting these women candidates. And I think, that is part of our mission, is to help these women who are in districts where perhaps people would think that they wouldn't otherwise have a chance, help get the word out to that district that there are Democrats here and there are alternatives to voting for their Republican, for the Republican candidates.
Thank you, Meg. If I missed anybody, I've kind of scrolled through a little bit of the pictures as I can see them. So if I missed somebody who's here, who was a candidate and you want to say something, let us know. Next slide, please.
Chris, Arlene has their hand up.
Who
Not
has?
sure if you want to take their question.
No, we'll get to questions soon.
Okay.
Has she written it down or is just raising her hand? Okay. So anyway, this is what we we're just talking about, and it's great to get firsthand comments about this from some of the people who were out there campaigning. Nationalizing races confuses voters. All elections are vibe. You know, somebody said, you know, all elections are vibe elections. What's the vibe in the country? And that's what you're talking about. But how do we change that? And how do we talk about what's really going on in the communities and talk about shared values and talk about not just values, but talk about shared issues? This is what's going on. We believe in raising the minimum wage. We've passed a bill to do it in the House and the Senate is holding it up. This is why we have to go, etc. Speaker McClinton, as I just said, credits the incumbent victories to staying local. This is what I did for you. These are the issues we're doing, and this is what we want to we need to be talking about. And I'm sure we're going to hear more of that. When women run, women win. And I'm so thrilled to hear from some of our past candidates to say that they're not scared of running again. And, you know, somebody like an Elizabeth Morrow is not saying I lost because I'm a woman. She's saying I'm lost for, I'm understanding it. I'm talking to people about why I lost, and I'm tough. And when women run, women win. And I just want you to remember the women senators who won, even though their states went with Trump, and just got to keep that in your head. It's critical. We just talked about this. It's critical to get out there early with both candidates and issues, and we need to continue to build local networks. You know, Represent wants to play a role in this, but you also have to be in your neighborhoods, in your areas, having gatherings, talking to people. If you want us to help facilitate that by bringing in an elected or somebody, let us know. But we really need to make sure that we're talking about this on a day-to-day basis. You know, I hate the idea that some of you were at your I was at a polling place where I didn't know anybody, but that's, you know, gave me something to do, run the machines. But if you were at a polling place and you saw a lot of people you didn't know, what does that say? And how do you get to know those people? You know, how do you have conversations with them about, well, how you feeling about your legislator now? And again, you know, it's important to remember PA legislative gains occurred in 2018 and 2022, and we need to be ready for 2026. Next slide. What's next for Represent PA? We have 18 House districts, as a matter of fact, that are currently held by ours, but they have over a 45% Democratic lean, according to some numbers. Some of those districts actually have a 50% Democratic lean. What are we doing about them? What are we going to do to get them next time? More discussions around primaries, making sure that we're helping to find the best candidates. Is that something Represent should be doing? I think we should be out there now for the 2026, for already trying to make it clear to both caucuses that if they help us find good women candidates in those districts, we will help raise money for those women. We want to organize discussions about the future. What role would you like to play? How can you help us? Let us know. We want to convene donors and endorsement committee members, perhaps, to talk about what broader roles they'd like to have in terms of recruiting candidates and supporting the caucuses. We're probably not going to have our next breakfast briefing till January. We all need to recoup, and I'm going to be in New Zealand for 3 weeks. But one of the things that's come up on the chat here is, you know, should we have a Represent Day in Harrisburg? We had one a few years ago. Maybe we have one early in the year just to get people fired up about going. I think we just put out a poll if people want to put in whether they'd be interested, whether they would show up in Harrisburg for a day. If we invited all of our supported women to lunch, if we had them in for chats, if we gave you tours, if we made sure that those of you who are represented by Republicans went to the Republicans' office and said, here I am, pay attention to me. So we'll see. I'm wondering whether it's also going to make sense. Well, anyway, so Arlene, you had a question.
Yeah, it wasn't actually a question, a quick comment. So I lead a group, the Upper West Side Action Group. We had huge numbers of people carpooling into mostly the Lehigh Valley. So the comment I have is that we were originally in the spring, we were up there and we were working with Susan Wild's campaign, really discouraged because Biden was just so horrible. And then we switched to almost all the time coming up every weekend for Harris's campaign and not for Susan Wild's. And I really regret that we didn't spend more time supporting Susan Wild and, at the door with her at the first, is the first thing we talk about. Because I was astonished that she lost every time we knocked on someone's door. They loved her, when we were out there in the spring. So that was, people just wanted to work for Harris. And it was, when the results came in, I'm really sorry we did that.
I think that's a great point. And when you talk to, I think it was his name in Wisconsin, the head of the Republican Party in Wisconsin, Joanne Witte, you know him. If you'd send me a note and tell me who it is, because I can't remember his name at the moment. But that's what Wisconsin did. They did a very intense discussion up and down the ballot for all candidates. And that's how and although Harris lost, she didn't lose by as much as, she did in Pennsylvania, for example. Ben Wickler, thank you for telling me, Betsy. Ben Wickler is the head of the Republican Party, the Democratic Party in Wisconsin. Fabulous work in doing whatever he needs to do. He was being considered, somebody suggested him to head the National Democratic Party, but he said no. But there are other people they're looking at for that. But we did a terrible job in Pennsylvania in terms of up and down the ballot. And I had two friends one from Hawaii and one from Massachusetts who were staying with me who were out door knocking for Harris, and they only talked about Harris. And so it's something we were not very good at. And we were not very good at coordinated campaigns. There wasn't any discussion going on. And I think that has to be part of the discussion going out, that the state Democrats talk just about the top of the ticket.
It is, just a quick comment. It is, hard to, especially when you're, when it's the last minute, that last, in the fall, the last time a couple of weeks, to talk about more than that. People don't want to be spending too much time at the door because they're exhausted. But when we went out in the spring, there was a lot more time. It's hard to have a conversation up and down when you wait till the last minute. But, anyway, when we went out for Wild, we would mostly talk about Wild. So it's a little hard to, when you're at the door, as you all know, you do door knocking also.
And I understand, Arlene, but maybe that's the reason to have either door knocking or other ways of talking to people in 2025.
Yes.
And to the election year in 2026 when people don't want anybody else knocking at their door. So maybe there's a way of making sure that we use the news media in different ways. The Jeff Yasses of the world who are dumping huge amounts of money against our candidates all over the state. It's hard to fight that. But what we've got is people, what we've got is organizing, what we've got are people who understand the need to raise minimum wage. Elizabeth Morrow, I know you raised your hand.
I just want to say that I knocked doors beginning in like March and April. And I will tell you, the early knocking does pay off, because I felt like people, even though it was a little early, it was a way to build rapport. Because toward the end, people are just sick of hearing from us and they tune us out, or they don't even answer the door at all. But I do definitely think attending local meetings, getting involved in your local community is essential. I have a business that people now continue to flood, and it's now a therapy session where everybody is coming in to talk to me, it's hard. But I think building community right now is essential in any way that we can do it. That will be key, especially as people begin to see what the other side is doing. We, just so nobody loses heart, in the 160th, we only lost by 4%. And in a -12 district, that's pretty cool. And we might have pulled it off if it weren't for the top of the ticket.
Yeah, and I'm watching a lot of the comments about, we didn't have the money Jeff Yass had. We didn't have the, Harris lost and that didn't work. But I still say that was true in Wisconsin. It was true in North Carolina. It was true in Arizona. It was true in every other state. So what did they do better than we did? And I'm not looking, I know that there's a lot of reasons, and I'm trying to flip from being, oh, life is terrible and Biden should have stepped down earlier, to, oh, and the whole country is misogynistic. I'm trying to flip from that to what happened in Wisconsin. What did other states do that we didn't do? And a lot of this is going to be groundwork in 2025. Did we have somebody else raised a hand?
I think it was Elizabeth. I think that's
Yeah.
where-
Okay, thank you. So what other comments do you have? This is where we're going. These are the kind of things we're thinking about. We're thinking of pulling together groups early next year. Let us know, info@representpa.org. Let us know if you'd like to be invited to something. Let us know if you want to talk further. There's a couple comments in the chat about fair districts. I think that they do really, really great work. But we're not, first of all, we are not going to get a change in how we redistrict with the current Republican legislators, in the current Republican senators. They're not interested. And so I think it's a great resource, and I value their work. But the first thing we have to do is flip the Senate. And get a bigger majority in the House. The other thing that I view in that line is, somebody was asking earlier about voter laws and what's going to happen. The good thing is there's not going to be a lot of changes to the voting laws that come from the legislature, because we still have our Democratic House. The bad thing is there's not going to be a lot of improvement in how counting is done or pre-canvassing and things, because we still have a Republican Senate. Something else that needs to change in Pennsylvania is Pennsylvania is a state that allows unlimited funding for our legislature. That is something different about us than other states. That's not going to change until we flip the Senate. So all of these kind of things we have to be talking about. And so I so appreciate the conversations. There are seats we can flip in the Senate in 2026. We're going to be working with the caucus to make sure that they're helping us find good women to run, more Patty Kims, and what else?
We have a redo of 203 House seats in 2026 as
Right.
well. And as you've said, Chris, we still continue to have some great opportunities in many of those seats, including Elizabeth's seat, and some of those seats that are, plus 45 Democrat, even hovering around 50. And again, it's not a presidential year, so we'll have the spotlight. So I think that bodes well for us too. We can't do it without money, and we can't do it without help and support. So we're already starting to look toward 2026 in terms of fundraising. And some people here have said they wanted to get involved. Yes, please. Raise your hand, send us an email. We'd love to have you, because we do have a little bit of a breather while we gear up for 2026.
And somebody just asked about the Supreme Court elections next year. I think we're going to be looking at wherever we can have an influence. I also think that there have to be letters to the editor and whatever else you can do, and using social media to go talk about every bad thing that's about to happen, and but also reminding people that state laws are what control a lot of what people like and don't like about where they live. State laws control the quality of your water. So even though the person that Trump has nominated for the EPA does not believe in climate change, does not believe in clean air and water and things like that, we still have state legislation. And we still should be fighting for those things. And those things happen at the state level with the people that you elect and that we support to run for the state house. So we got to remember to help take these issues local for people so that they understand the value. So as things happen and they don't like what's happening on a federal basis, we have to help them take it local. So, and yes, who said the comments? Sharon Strauss, yes, I hope we have real elections in 2026. So, anything else you want, be sure and send us an email, you know, let us know. Is there anything else somebody wants to bring up today? Anybody know anyone in North Carolina, Wisconsin they want to bring in to coach us? We'll find people, but be sure and watch what happened in other states. And we just need to, as a group, we need to all learn. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today. We had, there's 138 people on the call right now. And I hope it was worth your time. We really appreciate your being here. It was a tough week, but you'll hear more from us in the future. And thank you to the candidates who joined us today. You know, we love you, we support you, and we're counting on you being at every city council meeting between now and the 2026 elections. Take care.